Welcome to College Recruiter. For the next half hour, we are going to be discussing innovative strategies that particularly government agencies use or can use to quickly hire dozens or hundreds of students and recent grads. At College Recruiter, we believe that every student and recent grad deserves a great career, so we've teamed up with a few experts who have many years of experience recruiting for government to help you think beyond your current strategies. I'm Anna Peters, I'm Content Manager with College Recruiter, and I'm excited to introduce my panelists today. First of all, Glen Fowler is the Recruiting and Training Manager at California State Auditor's Office. And there he not only develops strategy for the recruiting program, but he also takes part in recruiting events to make sure that strategy meshes with practice. In addition, he was instrumental in initiating their mentor program to promote successful onboarding and retention. Glen, I should say, is also the current president of the National Association of Colleges and Employers, or NACE. Thank you so much for being here, Glen.
Thank you. Pleased to be here.
Josh Glazeroff is a consular cone officer with 20 years of experience in the Foreign Service. He's currently overseeing recruitment outreach for the Department of State. And having served overseas in Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic, and South Africa early on in his career, Josh recently spent 5 years in New Delhi, India, including time as the Consul General. His domestic assignments have included time as the Burma Desk Officer, serving in the Bureau of Human Resources, Senior Watch Officer in the Operations Center, and Bureau of Consular Affairs. Welcome, Josh. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Anna. Really happy to be here.
Kyle Hartwig is Senior Human Resource Specialist at National Institutes of Health, NIH. And innovative recruitment and employment branding efforts are Kyle's specialties. He works closely with NIH management to strategically fill their talent gaps. And you'll also see Kyle presenting on college campuses to students about public sector careers. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you, Anna.
And then Elizabeth Purkiss is Vice President of Sales at College Recruiter. For 12 years, Elizabeth has been driving thought leadership and creating strategic partnerships with organizations with very visible brands, from startups to Fortune 500 to government agencies as well. And she has particularly extensive experience in digital media and programmatic advertising and new technology. So we're very happy to have Elizabeth here. Glad to see you, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Great. So let's dive in. Glen, I think I'm going to put you on the spot here first. Can you speak to government recruiters and the pace? What unnecessarily slows down government recruiting?
So I think, with government recruiting, in the challenge for especially recruiters who kind of adopt the current, the practices that were in place, a lot of them are antiquated, redundant, heavily bureaucratic. And, I would challenge recruiters to really look at the processes and focus on ease, flexibility, and timeliness, and look at the entire process through the candidate's lens rather than, the organization's lens. Because at the end of the day, really, that experience for the candidate, that is going to be a true reflection of your organizational culture. So it's not just about attracting them, it's allowing them to have a real, genuine, authentic experience that reflects, again, your values and so on related to your organization. So I'll quickly just touch on each one of these. Ease. What I mean by ease is paperless. Sadly to say, a lot of government organizations are still using paper because that's the way we've always done it. So I would really encourage those organizations to, as much as they can, try to go paperless. Now, I think there's a lot of pushback in this area because they want a genuine signature from the candidate. But I would say, look at when you actually need that signature. Do you need it on the front end as an applicant? If so, then maybe they can just scan it and send it to you. If not, maybe you can wait, and as you're shepherding through the process, wait until further down the pipe where maybe it's during the hiring phase. Ability to apply online, and I would say even better yet, even mobile. If you can get to that point where now applying does not have to be a 10-minute, half-hour process, it really should, if possible, try to get it down to about 5 minutes, and applying might be as much as completing a profile. So now they've expressed interest in your organization. You now have the ability to engage and shepherd them through that hiring process. Adding to that, I would say candidates need the ability to apply 24/7. This is a 24/7 world. Certainly in government, we want to attract candidates who are thinking 24/7. And then I would say, don't be redundant. You want to simplify as much as possible. So again, looking at your application, are all those fields in the application the same fields that a candidate's included in their resume? If so, then let's not have them take the time to fill out that application. Have them complete a profile and upload the resume, and respect that resume. I mean, they put a lot of work into it. I think people want to feel like there was a reason why they did it, even in government. And then I would add on the ease piece, automating the initial exam. So if you automate that exam, you can spread that net very widely. And so even here in California, we're a California organization, we spread our net nationally so we can attract talent, and we'll let that initial exam kind of cull the talent and best identify those who have the skills and competencies to be successful here in our organization. And by having that online exam, it allows for 24/7 access on the candidate piece. I'll quickly just touch on flexibility and timeliness, and then that way we can get to the others. Flexibility, ability to apply year-round and compete year-round. There's still a lot of agencies where a candidate can apply any time of the year, but all they're doing is applying for the exam, and they're not technically applying for a position yet, and they've got to wait for that position to open up. I would advocate, real-time applying and hiring year-round. And start dates, similarly, a lot of agencies will have really strict start dates, defined strict start dates in place, no flexibility there. They're not looking at when their candidates are available and kind of respecting when the talented candidates are most likely to be available. In my world, and especially like a third of my hires have accounting backgrounds, more and more we're seeing those individuals, they're not getting through in 4 years. It's taking them 4.5 years. So a lot of those, best candidates are really coming available in December. I would also, as far as flexibility, consider opening up your minimum qualification requirements. So years ago, and even in our office, it was very rigid. They had to have certain majors, and over time, we ended up evolving. So a couple of years ago, it's now all majors, open to all majors. And really what we're doing with our hiring process is identifying those candidates who have those skills and competencies again, so that all the processes tie to that. And then finally, timeliness. And there are so many government agencies that are just really, their processes are really slow and arduous. And I think, when we talk about streamlining and what it means to be timely is not months. Timely is days. As a government organization, you want to find a way to position your agency so you are tendering an offer, and it's amongst those offers that talented candidate is considering. If you're teasing it out months later, I know myself, I can't afford to wait around. So the other thing I would suggest is, as much as you can through your hiring process, put the ball in the candidate's court. So although on the one hand, I'm saying you want to be expeditious and streamline it, not every candidate needs that. But I think candidates want to be able to drive the timeline. So, through the process, you're putting the ball in their court, and you're allowing them to kind of move on to that next step as it best suits them. And finally, the other thing I would think about is, and I think a lot of agencies are guilty of this, where when they're looking at minimum qualifications, they're looking at, and holding their candidates to the minimum qualifications required of the position at the time that they start the position, rather than, why not let them apply 9 months before they will meet those minimum qualifications, whether it's a degree or a particular skill set or so on that they need to have. So that way you are teeing them up and you are in that pool of employers who are basically vying for that talented candidate. We want to be in that pool. So I think that's how you can best be in that pool. So those are just a few ideas.
Kyle, I wanted to tap into your insight too. Would you add anything to that? So considering the timeline, Glenn, to just jump on your point of it can't be months, it has to be days. What is getting in the way, Kyle, in your opinion?
Well, if you're trying, and I really think all I'm going to do is add to what's previously been said here. I think Glenn did a fantastic job. If you have a somewhat strict HR application process, now timeliness, we know we can try to reduce that timeliness somewhat, but there are some policies that we cannot change. So one of the things that you can do, though, is focus on how quickly you can change a passive candidate to an active candidate right before the announcement goes up. So if you have an open continuous announcement all year long, first of all, I should come work there. That sounds great. If you have more of a seasonal approach and you're doing mass hiring at a larger scale a few times a year, flip the candidate quickly from a passive candidate to an active candidate, get them in the application system, and then as the HR process is unfolding, you can use different techniques to speak to the candidate's experience using as many touch points as humanly possible before that final offer. Easier said than done, I'm not going to lie, but if you are in a position where you're at in a government office or in a federal agency, you still can maneuver that piece. So you need to train recruiters on how to sell the employee value proposition very quickly with a candidate to get them active into the process. Another thing I might add is that there are a number of HR professionals that feel like they may be breaking the law or being too active and too engaged with the candidates is somehow giving some unfair advantage, and all of that is really a myth. So the more that government employers actually understand the law around hiring and they understand the policies and the procedures, the more they're able to break away from those myths and become basically the best recruiter they can be. They need to be empowered, but they need to have the skill to flip candidates quickly, move through the formal process, and secure that deal at the end, all very quickly, all with a very personal touch. Not easy to do.
Mm-hmm. Josh, what would you add to that in terms of strategies that you've seen or you've employed to hire quickly and hire at scale?
So what we're using here in the State Department is a lot of sourcing. We're finding that being able to get out there and find prospects we think have the right skill at our opportunities helps us add lots of people very quickly to our lists. I also want to highlight some of the great federal programs, generally known as the Pathways programs. We have a Presidential Management Fellowship available to graduate students. We have something called Recent Graduates Program. We even have programs for people who are still in school, all able to join the federal workforce and then convert over to full-time employees. Here at the State Department, we've got some great programs. We're actually paying for people to go to school. We have the Pickering Fellowship, the Wrangell Fellowship. We have a new program called the Foreign Affairs IT Fellowship, where we're trying to train people in IT skills. We also have a program called the Consular Fellows, where I am desperately seeking people with language skills, and we are hiring hundreds of employees. I encourage everybody to check out our website, careers.state.gov, and our mobile app. We do have a mobile app, as recommended earlier. All of these enable us to get lots of people interested in all these opportunities.
Elizabeth, what examples have you seen in government of hiring at scale?
There's several different ones. I think, kind of touching on what Glenn and Kyle had previously said is really qualifying them early. So if you can shorten that application process down to a few questions and then, qualify, are they interested? Are they capable of this? It really helps. We work with several different organizations in the government, such as the CIA, Army National Guard, and that's one of the key things of success for them finding the right candidates at the right time and hiring at scale is qualifying them early in the process before they get down that path and they realize that maybe they're not qualified for this position or they're not interested in this position. So I think definitely what everyone has contributed is really important in the process, making sure that you qualify them early because it just streamlines the process and you get so many more candidates and you're able to hire a lot quicker.
Mm-hmm. And then I guess I wanted to loop back to you, Glenn, because we, especially on the point that Kyle made about this myth where being more engaged or engaging more personally with candidates somehow violates regulation. Can you speak to that? How would you calm recruiters' fears?
So yeah, I think it's a great point, and you know, I think Kyle hit the nail right on the head there. That it's not that we can't engage and communicate. It's what we're communicating. So, you know, that you absolutely don't want to find yourself coaching a candidate and somehow giving them an unfair advantage with questions and so on. But, you know, really what Kyle and what I would advocate is that what you're trying to do is be transparent about your hiring processes. You're trying to manage their expectations about what to expect as they go through, what are the timelines, what's the position like, and more, and I suspect, you know, the others on the line would agree that recruiting in the government realm, it's about educating more than it is, you know, classic recruiting. And what I find is, as I meet candidates, prospective candidates, and quote, educate them about who we are and what we do, you know, more often than not, they're drinking the Kool-Aid very quickly. They're like, gosh, I had no idea such an organization existed. It sounds like it aligns with current expectations, you know, millennials and others, as to making a difference and so on. And that's what government brings, and I think distinguishes from many other employers. But, you know, I did want to touch on, I guess, a concern as far as scaling. And it's great. I love that the feds have got some programs in place for conversion. Unfortunately, and I suspect there are going to be some others on the line from state agencies where it just isn't in place currently. That this was a challenge we had. So the civil service in California, you could have a student assistant classification operating, you know, and those individuals operating as interns have a fabulous experience in that role, and then have to, from scratch, reapply for the full-time position. In our case, it's auditor evaluators, and not make it through the process. And that was really disheartening for them and us. So I know, you know, and I tip my hat to California. We call it Cal HR, but our human resources department, because they are exploring many different things. And that is one area where I'm hoping we end up with classifications that dovetail from that intern into the full-time, so we are able to successfully convert. So just a few other points.
I want to tap into a little bit of mistakes that recruiters often make, and we've touched on this a little bit, but I wanted to loop back to it and give, really, if any of the panelists wanted to jump in with any mistakes that they have made themselves, where you have looked back and realized that you should have hired somebody else, or maybe you've seen other recruiters lose top candidates. What causes recruiters to lose top candidates, or top employees for that matter?
Well, I'll jump in here just quickly. It's a very interesting position to be in as a government recruiter, knowing there will be a formal qualification process and application process, but we're not there yet, right? Our job is to do outreach and to engage with candidates and to target candidates using LinkedIn, other different places too. So we're actually somewhat evaluating a candidate's potential to make it through the qualification process before it's even started. So in that instance, it's not enough to be, it's not enough to do the ABC, always be cultivating. You must also know how to actually qualify, evaluate candidates in your own, mind and process as you work with the candidates as they go through. And so that's an easy mistake to come into, where the candidates you find don't make it through the process.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Glenn, what would you say from your experience in this foreign service? Anything that causes you to lose top candidates?
Glenn or Josh?
Josh?
Yeah, sorry. Thanks for Kyle for raising a couple of things there. I mean, I do believe strongly in the end-to-end relationship management of our process. I have to acknowledge for sure that the process can be lengthy. It's not days on my side for sure, but we have foreign service personnel, colleagues of mine, based all around the United States who are out there engaging people one-on-one. And I think that one-on-one, as you said, cultivation is really, really important. These people's interests, their skill bases, where they might fit in, and encouraging them, maybe not helping them with the assessment per se, but at least encouraging them to consider the careers and opportunities we offer. I think that one-on-one relationship is, and it's something the State Department has invested in.
Mm-hmm. So I know there is certainly differences between corporate recruiting and government recruiting, many differences, but I also think that there are lessons to be learned or applied from corporate recruiting to government recruiting. And I thought, Elizabeth, you might have some insight into this.
Definitely. And just to piggyback on the previous question too, I think this is the education piece is really important. And I know this is something that corporate recruiters do a lot of the time, but they lay out the interview process at the beginning of every candidate call. So it's at the beginning when they're qualifying them, or when it's first reaching out, letting them know that it might take 6 weeks for them to get through the process. But as they touched on, encouraging them along the way, getting them excited, making them realize the life changes that this role could have on them is definitely an important piece. And I also think a good thing, the corporate recruiters are really big on their brand and, using that employment brand to connect with candidates, connect with people, to make them realize, hey, these are the benefits you're going to have by working with us. And I think that's something that the government recruiters can take a look at as well. It goes back to that encouragement piece, but making sure that the candidates are excited, make them want to work for the government. The government has so many possibilities and, a world of opportunities for these candidates. So really amp that up so these candidates want to look for these jobs, are excited to look for these jobs, and excited to go down the path, even if it takes maybe, 2 weeks to 2 months to go through that application process, but, they have something to look forward to at the end.
Yeah, definitely. There's so many perks, and those need to be communicated. Elizabeth, as long as you, can you keep going and tell us a little bit about what you know about recruiting Gen Z? We've been talking about this a lot recently, but Gen Z will soon be entering the workforce. And if government recruiters haven't taken a look at the differences of this in this generation, that's something that they should start analyzing and start preparing for. So in scaling college recruitment, is there anything specific to government recruiting that recruiting professionals should know?
I think you
when
hit
it comes to
on
Gen
that.
Z?
It's the benefits to the Gen Z. Gen Z has a lot of different options coming out of college at this point, and they really want to know. It's more of an interview process for them as well. It's not that mindset of I have to get a job right away. I'm going to take the first offer that I can see. It's more of, hey, I want to see what the companies can offer to me as well. So they are definitely digging into that benefit piece of each position that is out there in each company. Do they get the littlest things from maybe free lunch once a day? Do they have unlimited vacation? Do they have a chance to travel? And so, for government recruiters, highlighting some of those pieces of the opportunity that they're going to have working for the government is definitely something that you want to highlight when you're describing the job, because especially for Gen Z, that's something they're interested in. It's not, to them, it's not a career anymore. It's more of a lifestyle. And does this career fit into my lifestyle?
Yep. Would you add anything to that, Josh, Gen Z, or Glenn, with your experience with NACE?
Yeah, the one thing I would
Yeah,
add,
so I have to.
Oh,
Go ahead, Josh.
So I have to give a big shout out to our marketing team on my side, where they do the research, and I I think we've really focused on this audience well. Luckily for me, also, I am selling a lifestyle, and it's a lifestyle of service. And I think that's very attractive to this generation. Our career is about, and that's something that I feel resonates well with them. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, I think that Elizabeth, you make a really good point that Josh pulled on, that this lifestyle, when you look at Gen Z and what they expect of employers, it's not just the career, it's not just the benefits, although those are important, and salary is important. It's a lifestyle. Do I believe in your brand? Glenn, what were you going to say?
Yeah, and looking at your own organization and the career trajectory. So when you are talking to a Gen Z, they're less likely, they really don't want to hear about a 20-year career with your organization. But if you can chunk it and say, here, if you join us in 2 years from now, here's where you'd be positioned. You can either continue that direction, or you can compete for these other positions in these other units and so on, and paint that picture for them so that it becomes more welcoming that, wow, okay, I am going to have these 1.5, 2-year junctures where I can pivot. They want the ability to pivot. And all the while, you are supporting their professional development. They want to know that you are really investing in them and authentically investing in them. So, but one other thing, I think I love that so many different things we've talked about, but the one key piece, and I think it really needs to be underscored, especially in government recruiting, is relationships. So we cannot rest on solely relying on our brand as a governmental organization. At the end of the day, it's really us. We are the face of the organizations with the schools and associations, and they equate that brand with us. And because of that relationship, it's going to open doors and so on that I think wouldn't be open otherwise to governmental recruiters. And by what I mean by opening doors is the ability for us to educate faculty, educate career service advisors. So when, like I was telling you about, we've opened it up to all majors. And I remember having a meeting with these advisors and one of them putting her hands up and saying, look, I meet with bio majors. What am I supposed to tell them about doing auditing, performance auditing, which is like problem solving? She said, how do I tell them about that? So I was able to kind of walk her through and connect the dots and explain how that candidate could be very successful in our environment. So relationships are very, very key, and continuity. You're a recruiter in a government organization. I think many are guilty of rotating them, or used to anyways. Yearly, you can't do that because you break that continuity and that relationship.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good note to end on. As it also is important to remember that with Gen Z too, because we think of them, they are a digital native generation, but they do want those relationships, and to engage them is important. Thank you, Glenn, for that point. And I think we have come to the end of our conversation today. But anybody viewing can get in touch with, I'll give you my email address if you would like to be put in touch with any of our panelists, or if you want to continue the conversation, you can email me at anna@collegerecruiter.com. And I want to thank our panelists one more time. Thank you to Glen Fowler from the California State Auditor's Office, to Josh Glazeroff from the Department of State, Kyle Hartwig from NIH, and Elizabeth, thanks for being with us from College Recruiter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.